Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Kate Fairhurst, who's the co-founder of GrowthMinds. Thanks for joining us, Kate.
Yeah, no problem. Really nice to meet you.
So Kate, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But try to keep your answers to 1 word or 1 sentence only, okay?
Okay, I'll have a go.
All right, the first one. At what age do you want to retire?
55.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
Half an hour.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Too many to be able to pick one.
Favorite color?
Green.
What time of the day are you most inspired?
I don't know. Pass.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
I need a lot of sleep. 8 hours is good for me.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
An upcoming marketing trend is sorry.
Okay, we're gonna have to skip that now. The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Brighton.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Dorsey.
The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition.
Galaxy Quest.
When did you last cry?
2 months ago.
How do you relax?
Walking, reading.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
2.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Pass.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Only pick the battles you can win.
And the last question is your favorite Netflix show.
Stranger Things.
Okay, great. So you had 2 or 3 passes, so that's good. That's like a good rate. And you don't win anything, but we can now go on to the long form questions. The first one is actually so before joining the SaaS startup scene, you led thinking on how disintermediation fueled brand storytelling. How would you say it helped shape your career now that you look back at it?
So the first thing I should say was that was an awfully long time ago. That was about 15 years ago. So so my memory is a bit fragile at the time. But back then, I would say that the setup for brand storytelling was completely different. Everybody was much more reliant on the media as being conduits to audiences for telling their stories. So, I'm looking back in the mid 2000s, and the internet was stable, and people had figured out that they needed websites and that they needed to present themselves there. But the richness of branded storytelling really wasn't in place in the way that it is now. And so brands were going through a journey to figure out what they needed to do on their websites and how. Back in the early days, back then, it was really rudimentary and quite functional rather than right now kind of content marketing has become branded storytelling through a funnel. It's become demand generation. It's quite loose in terms of its impact, whereas it was really quite transactional back in the mid 2000s. It was, if we put this content on our website, we will get SEO benefit and we will drive this many people, rather than thinking about the actual brand value. So, I suppose the short answer is it's ensured that everything to do with my career since that time has been to do with content marketing and helping brands figure out how to do storytelling in a slightly more sophisticated way than just thinking about the SEO benefit. And that's definitely something that I've seen as a consistent thing right the way through to today.
Mm-hmm. And so, having seen the past of brand storytelling and being in the present of it, what do you think? Where do you think the future of brand storytelling is headed?
I think there is further disintermediation still to come. I think disintermediation of of media storytelling has happened quite extensively. I think the media still has, of course, huge benefit in terms of owned audiences that brands will never have. I don't think brands have really gone through the process of figuring out how to recreate the event space functionally. I think conferences and exhibitions still have an enormous amount of third-party value that corporates can think more about how they can recreate and add into their own businesses without needing those channels themselves. So I think continuing to think about different channels and be more creative about the channels and routes to market is going to be important as brand storytelling continues to evolve. And then there's also, there's technology enhancements that can fuel differences in brand storytelling. So, and these are often driven by the media as well. So media is starting to do virtual reality storytelling where you can place somebody inside an environment where the news is happening and you can get a 360-degree perspective of the news event. And brands typically move behind these kind of evolutions. So as news-based storytelling continues to evolve with the advent of live blogging and immersive storytelling, I think these will continue to be embraced by brands.
And speaking of brands that you've worked with, so what were your learnings from launching your first startup in April 2014, was it?
It was back. It's still again a long time ago. So I touched on the importance of events, and I suppose potentially my biggest takeaway is that events remain the sleeping giant for brand storytelling, for themselves as much as anything else. If you look at the journey of many event companies, a lot of them started off as publishers, and the events were symbiotic to the publications that they ran, and then have been spun off over time. But you look at the way that LinkedIn is developing with direct-to-market communication, and the format that it's taking is now, I think, moving faster than events companies are doing in terms of thinking ahead in terms of the new structures that can happen with events. So I think the importance of the events market, the need for the events market to evolve rapidly in order to stay relevant, and the other businesses who are doing events well is potentially my biggest takeaway from that.
And how do you think the pandemic caused a little bit of a shakeup in the events industry, and how is it going to change after the pandemic?
Well, clearly it broke a lot of business models for many events companies and stopped people going to events. I think that much is pretty obvious. But when you look at the evolution of events and how, the events industry is fundamentally taking the same model as the media industry used to take. The events hold audiences, and people pay for access to those audiences, either physically or through sponsorship or whatever. So it has accelerated the thinking away from in-person and towards how does this work digitally, effective digitally, given people still want to eyeball each other for effective communication. So I think it has, because of the breakdown in business model with face-to-face, I think it has forced the accelerated thinking into new ways to gain revenue from those audiences, which the events companies still hold. They still have extensive email lists that sit within those businesses that are huge value to brands to have access to. So it's looking at what other business models can really be viable for them if face-to-face is always going to be reduced.
So besides events, what are some fundamentals in your opinion that one needs to address in order to grow a SaaS business?
The first thing, the most important thing for any SaaS business to be able to grow is having a product market fit, I would say. Without having a benchmark validated, data validated product market fit, I think doing any growth for a SaaS business is risky. And I think there are lots of SaaS businesses out there, and I'm talking early stage here, right? But I think there's a lot of SaaS businesses out there who feel instinctively like they've got product market fit, but it's not validated, it's not benchmarked, and they're potentially being overeager, impatient, over enthusiastic, and trying to push ahead with their growth before they're too ready, before they're ready. And in doing so, they are wasting time and budget focusing on the wrong things. Whereas, focusing on doubling down and really strengthening their product market fit, so their sales conversion rates, their retention rates, their client success scores are better. Really should be their focus point.
And we've also read online that, in your opinion, educated decision making for startups is preferable to quick testing and adaptation based on market reaction. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of people that would argue with me about this one. And I think this really does apply to early stage startups. So, and this is just my living experience. And I should also qualify that this theory applies more to B2B SaaS than it does to B2C, because that's where much of my career has been focused. But repeatedly, I've seen the same behavior in that a B2B SaaS company has the logic of, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give a 3-month window and maybe £1,000 budget or £2,000 budget to doing some growth experiments, and we'll see what happens. And then based on what works, we'll, prove the investment potential and we'll double down on that. And so often with B2B SaaS, that logic there is fundamentally broken. And the reason why it's broken is because the size of the audiences for B2B SaaS are actually, if it's done right and the product market fit is sound, should actually be quite small. So you've got that real market resonance at the beginning. You nail one niche and you get that right and you scale from there. So at the beginning, you're targeting that small market. Now, A/B tests for a small market aren't really particularly academic, because you don't have the volume of data to be informative. Somebody who's having a bad morning or is being particularly enthusiastic about something can skew the data, and therefore it stops you from taking those sound learnings. And I think also the problem with this approach is that I don't think entrepreneurs really have always got a sense of the cost of a conversion and the time of a conversion. So, for example, if you play through the metrics looking, and many of these experiments are on advertising, right? So it can be difficult to reach quite a small market. And then if it's LinkedIn, you could be looking at a cost per click of £6.50, £15, somewhere in the region, between those two numbers, or higher if your market is really niche. And then what you're doing is you're driving to a landing page with a 3% conversion rate or whatever. And as you start to push through the funnel, your £1,000 budget goes nowhere, particularly when you're taking into account the amount of turnover and sales conversion time that it takes. So in that 3-month window with that £1,000 budget, it's very easy to learn that, or at least it's very easy to learn that a 3-month £1,000 budget doesn't work. And it's very difficult to actually learn anything material other than this ad unit got a better click than that ad unit. But if you look at the time and the reasoning that could be spent over that period of time, you could get so much further.
And so you've also talked about de-risking the journey to scale a business by focusing purely on value-driven activities. So what constitutes such value-driven activities, in your opinion?
Okay, so the value-driven activities vary depending on where a business is at. So I love Howard Love's startup J-curve, which maps out the journey to growth that 90% of successful startups have taken. So it starts at create, it's your big idea. And then you go to release, where you're putting something in people's hands for the first time. Then you move on to morph, where you've got some market feedback, and what you're doing is refining and really improving the product to the point that you're confident that you've got something that people care about. Then you've got model, which is where you take your first steps to building a scalable route to market, but very tentative. Then you go to scale, which is where you've got some proof and you're really doubling down on your financing, you're doubling down on your staffing. And then you go to harvest, which is where you can really turn things up and potentially look to exit. So picking the right activities depending on exactly where on that startup J-curve you are. And I think a lot of businesses look further up the J-curve and say, oh, we're probably coming out of morph going into model, because that's where they want to be. But often, a business can, if a business is at release stage, the most important thing is getting user feedback on the product and learning and bringing that in-house and adjusting it and getting as much depth from that user feedback as possible so you can improve the product and refine it. At Morph, it's the same. It's about improving that product market fit. At Model, it's about finding those minimum viable channels to growth. So it's not about going hard on ad spend. It's about going measurable and finding those channels which you can measure impact and really deliver that ROI within a feasible window. So yeah, I think my takeaway from that is benchmark where you're at on the startup J curve and be honest with yourself around where that's at. And then your primary target is to get to the next stage. That's all that matters. If you try and skip stages, you'll slow yourself down. So pick the next stage and then focus on the activity that's going to get you there and ignore everything else.
And so could you give us any examples of brands that you've worked with that have been able to follow this in a good manner?
So I think brands could be misleading. So I work with early stage B2B SaaS startups, right? So I can give you an example of a business called Thoughtonomy, who were bought by Blue Prism some time ago. And so what Thoughtonomy did was they really nailed their product market fit, and then they looked, as I say, at the minimum viable channels. So they set up things like Google search ads, Bing ads, but then they also looked at a really effective content marketing funnel down the bottom of the business, looking at how to engage sales conversations and improve sales conversion rates. And that was a smart thing to do, because at model stage, the most important thing you can do is focus your energy on making sure the sales conversion rates are right. Because if you get that right, if you're getting a good proportion of leads being closed, you can't really lose. Whereas if you're getting a huge volume of leads coming through and they're poor quality, you can lose because you're probably spending more money on that. So they got that bit really right. The marketing director, Laura, put in some very clever content marketing systems and some good levers to pull to make sure that sales were following up. And then when that was working well, we were able to step in and look at, okay, how do you accelerate this? And what can you do in order to reach more people now and really get to the point where you're able to take that solid foundation that you've got and build on it. So looking at more experimental ad channels, looking at more things like partnerships and events and how to use white papers and webinars and that sort of thing to scale conversions. So and that was very effective because they had that bottom of the funnel working. They were able to really get the meat from that additional activity. And so they were then able to move to harvest, and they did that exit a few years ago really effectively. So that's one case.
Mm-hmm. And so your model also implies that it can be fair to turn down clients in order to focus on having all areas of a business correctly productized while scaling it up. What would you have to say about that?
I think a qualified agreement that it's okay to turn down clients. With an early stage business, you're always in the position of having to balance money and presence of money and the life that you get from that money with doing the right things. Doing the right thing in this respect would be to turn down the business if it's not completely adhering to the product market fit that you've got. There are two stages in product market fit, of course. There's the problem solution fit. So, dear market, you've got this problem. We're offering a solution to it. Do you have need for that? Yes or no? But then the next stage of that is the product market fit. So we have built this product. Which market is the most appropriate for that? And what you're trying to do there is sell your thing of that shape and size. And so taking a business where what you're doing is, oh yeah, we'll build this extension to it to make it right for you, isn't validating and building on that product market fit. So it's potentially taking you in a direction that is that's going to burn resource without moving the business strategy forward. There will be times when you have got no choice but to take that revenue, but you need to think carefully about it.
And so what would be your opinion on pivoting the entire business because you found a customer who you feel kind of embodies something that the market needs?
Ooh, warning sort of sirens at that, I think. everything that you do in the business should be geared to what the market is telling you. However, that should be validated on a volume of opinion, not on one person's opinion. So you need 20, 30 voices telling you what their problem is, what they're doing to fix it, how much organizational backing they've got, how they feel about the fixes that they're trying, what's working, what isn't, if they had the perfect solution, what it would look like. And then it's about aggregating all that feedback and taking the center of it and building to the center of it, not one person going, hey, I've got this requirement, and going, great, let's turn the ship around, and away we go. You need to be very measured and controlled about that.
Okay. So the last question for you is, what would you be doing if not this in your life right now?
I would be in a hammock in the jungle, I think. There are definitely two energies to my life. I at my desk, I'm very high output, I'm very high energy, I'm very driven in terms of achieving growth for businesses. And then I switch off and I find somewhere quiet, and I'm much more in tune with nature, and I read and and go trekking through the jungle. So if I weren't here, that's where I would be. I expect at this point in time.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Kate Fairhurst. Thanks for joining us, Kate. Check out their website, GrowthMinds, for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.